Welcome back to
Project Stories.
Bees. we're we're just gonna lib that every time. Yeah, I like it.
We got to do it that.
Typical. All right. Well, we are back with a next segment of Project Stories, and today we are going to talk about love and a big love of your life and the father of your children. So maybe I've spoiled the answer to the first question, but I have one for you. Are you ready?
Yep.
Who was your first love, and what was that like?
Okay. Annie had sent in 28 questions, and so I've covered a lot of them, but I haven't covered anything about my first husband, Bill, and his name was William Clifford Johnson, and I met him in high school, and we were both in East End, and both went to East High School. And I thought he was adorable, and I always liked him all the way through high school. And we did all the proms together. It was a small enough class. I think we had about 80 people in our class, so we kind of knew everybody.
Yeah. And were you dating all throughout high school, like going steady?
You know, I wouldn't say we were going steady because we really just went to dances together. He was a great dancer, and I loved to dance with him.
Wow, it runs in the family.
It does.
The dance moves.
He was very musical as well. And so Bill and I don't know, there was something about Bill that was pretty magical to me because he lived more of a normal life than I did, which I didn't mind my life because I liked what we were doing at home. But he had actually a mother and father, and they were Swedish. They came from Sweden. Not them, but their parents had come from Sweden, so they were second generation.
Yeah.
And they lived in a nice house in Central Park, and they just the dad worked at the Great Northern. Cliff Johnson was his name. Mm-hmm. He worked for the Great Northern, and
the Great Northern
Railroad. Yeah. He was in charge of the store department. Now, Grandpa Johnson Cliff was the most persnickety person you've ever met. You could eat off of his basement floor. So when he was in the store department, and they had to move several different places because he had been at the Great Northern for a long time. But then he got this job as the head of the store department. The store department at the Great Northern Railroad was like these big pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
So they were in this big, huge place. We went there. He had the floor was all painted, and he had people that put white lines around all the things that were on the floor.
Wow. To organize it.
Everything was organized.
Wow.
His basement was organized. Oh
persnickety means what? Like kind of like anal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if the last time I heard the word persnickety, but
he was very, very tidy. Anyway,
yeah, and that's
he grew up in that house.
Yeah,
we were not persnickety.
Yeah. And Bill was the only child, right?
He was the only child.
Yeah,
and his mother and father adored him.
Do you know if that was on purpose?
Yes, she just about died having him. So she wasn't able to have any more children.
Oh, okay.
I think they really wanted him. Clearly, they weren't a great match, the two of them, because I think he was very dominant, and she could have a really strong personality, but he was very much the boss. And things like animals, he didn't want to have any animals in the house, and I'm sure she did. Well, it just broke Bill's heart because Bill wanted a kitty and he couldn't have there was so many awful stories about him and wanting an animal, and he could never have it because of Grandpa Johnson. But Bill would come over to my house, and he would spend time there playing with my kitty, because
Mm-hmm.
we always had catnip, and they
Yeah.
threw it up in the air. I mean, he just thought it was the most fun house because we always had the dog, we had a cat, or several. We had birds.
Well, just as you thought his life was magical, I'm sure he thought yours was too.
Yeah, he did, and he was always welcome in our house. So anyway,
And that was before you were dating. That was like he was just
no,
a friend.
we
Of
we
the
had
family.
kind of, but I don't remember us ever really going out. But we went to the same parties. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was a small community, so
When was
everybody
your-
knew everybody.
When was your first kiss?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Probably when we went to the prom. My mother had made my prom dress. I loved this dress. My mom, this is another thing people don't know about my mom. My mom was the best seamstress you've ever had. I mean, she could whip up something for me one day and I could wear it the next. I'm not
Wow.
kidding you.
Wow.
So she made this gorgeous, gorgeous dress for me. And sometimes she didn't even use a pattern. She just had that in her brain.
Wow.
She just was really good at that. And she just had an old treadle singer.
Yeah. Where you pedal.
You pedal.
So that the...
Yeah.
Yep.
And so she made this dress for me. And she had to stay up until Bill and I got back home because she had to sew me up. She didn't have time to put in the zipper.
So that when you got home, she had to rip
She
you
had
out of
to
the...
rip out of there. That's how it was. It was so funny.
Wow, talk about custom.
It was a really custom, yeah.
Wow.
But anyway,
I want to see a picture of that. Do you have a picture?
I do have a picture of that someplace.
We'll find it.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. It was a beautiful, and sometimes I want to go to a dance on Friday night. So Thursday, I said, "Mom, I just need a new skirt," and she'd whip up a new skirt for me. I just go to the fabric store and get some stuff, and she would just make it for me. So I mean, when you're poor, it's really funny. At that time, we weren't really poor.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
I was able to do everything I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was not hindered from that. But
Mm-hmm.
times were so different. Like, I could go to college, and it was really cheap.
Ugh, well,
And now all these
that's a whole nother tangent.
Nobody can go to college now unless they've got a lot of money.
Back to your first kiss.
Okay, my first kiss. Well, probably I don't even remember it, but
You don't
probably
remember
was Bill.
it?
No, I don't remember any of that
But
stuff.
was Bill your first kiss?
Oh
do you
yeah,
think?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
because I had not had any boyfriends prior to that.
Yeah.
Because I've always had a lot of friends, but most of them were girlfriends.
Yeah.
I always had a best friend.
So
But anyway.
you would go to a lot of dances. You were
Yeah.
kind of good friends.
And we were always dating, and in the yearbook, it's his yearbook said about him, he's only got one number in his little black book.
And it
That
was
me.
yours?
Which was so cute.
Oh my gosh, that
But-
is so cute.
Yeah. So but then he went to college, the same college as I did, which is at Superior State.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't like it, so he dropped out. And he eventually went down to Dunwoody Institute, where he went to school for a couple of years and became a draftsman.
What's a draftsman?
A draftsman is a person that does a lot of the drawings for companies
Mm-hmm.
that make things.
Oh, okay.
And so
It's like
he
almost
was
like an engineer.
well, that's what he got into.
Oh.
So through his lifetime, he was always working for companies that did the same thing as my brother. I mean, he was in those kinds of companies in the very beginning
Mm-hmm.
of computers
Mm-hmm.
and learning all of that. And even at one time, even started his own place with a plotter. He designed this plotter with another guy.
Wow.
And they put this together and did the I think either the plumbing or for the Bellevue, which means he drew all the lines for where the plumbing stuff was.
Wow.
I don't know. But he was very, very clever. He's very smart.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really a sport person.
A
This kid,
sport
oh
person.
yeah, this kid was really good at just about everything, kind of like your dad.
You know, kind of
He would,
like.
yeah,
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people in our family that are kind
real
of
athletic.
athletic.
Yeah,
Yeah, we might not be
easy.
traditional
Yeah,
in sports, but I feel like almost all of us, like
yeah,
Johnson's,
yeah,
extended
yeah,
are
yeah.
sporty and fit. So Bill was really into the
Right.
sports.
So he was on a basketball team in high school that went to the state.
Mm,
And when we were senior,
Wisconsin.
yeah, and we went to Madison for that, but they didn't win, but they were part of the Wisconsin teams, and he everything he did, he kind of did pretty well. So
Mm.
he was so we broke up in college, and then I was dating a couple of different people. Then we got back together when I was almost a senior in college, and
Mm.
then we started dating
Why'd
again.
you? How'd you get back together? Who approached who?
I don't know. I think we met someplace, and
On purpose?
no,
You just ran
that.
into
Yeah,
each.
I think we
Well,
ran into each
ran into
other.
each other.
Yeah, because
Is
we hadn't seen each other for a while.
unless Bill was looking
Yeah,
for you.
yeah, could be. But anyway, we did get together, and of course that was, then we really wanted to get married. So we
Mm.
got married, both of us at 22,
Oh my gosh.
and we
Wait,
were.
so you were one second. So you dated like the first year of college. He dropped out and you broke up. Or when I just remember reading these letters that you wrote to him.
Oh yeah,
When were you in a long distance relationship where you were
that's when he was in Minneapolis, and I
and
was in
you were in
Superior.
school and he was
I was finishing up my senior year,
oh
and
and
he
he
was
was in
still in Minneapolis going to
okay.
school.
'Cause
So then we were writing back and forth.
those letters are really sweet to read.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hope you still have those.
yeah, they are someplace.
Yeah.
But
And so
but anyway,
22. Did you have a big wedding? Wait,
huge
did he
wedding.
propose?
Oh yeah, and
How or
and of
when?
course his mother and father were just absolutely. I mean, they were so excited.
Oh,
Their
really?
only son.
Yeah.
They were Lutherans, and we had this big, huge wedding. Of course, they paid for it in this Lutheran church, and I had just graduated from college about like a week before the wedding,
Oh my
so
gosh.
I didn't have time for anything. So I borrowed a dress. My friend that I got married the year before was same size. I borrowed her dress. The bridesmaids, we ordered the bridesmaids' dresses over a Sears and Roebuck catalog. And then we made our own hats. And that was hysterical because all my girlfriends were in my wedding.
Yeah.
And we had these hats that we made. They were big brimmed hats because it was in June wedding. And so we would make them into cowboy hats. I mean, by the time the wedding came, the hats were kind of like awful. But we laughed so hard about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the wedding was a wonderful wedding, and then we had a dance afterwards. And then because he was also a fisherman, he loved fishing.
Hmm.
We went for a week after the wedding, got in his car, and we drove to a lake where we spent the honeymoon 7 days in this kind of isolated, and it poured down rain. It was kind of awful.
I was gonna say this. What was that like?
Well, when you get married and you're 22, you've got all these sparkles about what's going to happen and what a wonderful wedding this is going to be, and what a wonderful, I mean, you're going to have this beautiful honeymoon, and it's going to be just wonderful. And no, he'd go out fishing and just get drowned and wet. And I was staying because I didn't want to go out fishing when it was cold and rainy.
Yeah.
It was in June, and June in Superior can be really cold and rainy.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then we moved to Minneapolis, right away. And I got my first job then in Minneapolis Public Schools, and he got a job at UNIVAC. And UNIVAC at that time was a big company that did a lot of electronics stuff.
Yeah. Wait, I have a question before you get into it more. What was like the quality that you loved most about Bill? That you were like, I want to marry you?
Um, I think I really looked up to him because I knew if he wanted to do something, he could do it. He'd figure it out and do it. He's one of those people that often is dependable, I guess. I mean, just somebody that you can kind of always depend on because he was able to figure things out. So, and we were really happy. We had the three kids really close in age, and
did you have kids pretty immediately after getting married?
Well, I was able to work 2 years. When in those days, if you got pregnant, heavens to bid, and you were a teacher, those children couldn't possibly see you pregnant, right? So you had to quit at 5 months. I'm not kidding you.
Why couldn't they see you pregnant?
Oh,
because then you couldn't talk about sex and
where
babies come from, and
isn't that the funniest thing?
That is such a funny, but also, I mean, I feel like a 5-month-old pregnant, should women be working when they're 5 months pregnant? Your body's doing a lot of work already. Yeah, I don't know. I might.
But nowadays they work right.
Yeah, 2 weeks. They're giving birth from the office. Yeah, it's true. But so you wanted to work a couple years before.
Yeah, and I did, and I taught a 4th grade classroom. Anyway, so then we built a house. We had an opportunity after I quit working that there was some kind of a deal where if you buy this house and it's kind of on the outskirts of Minneapolis, and you did the finish work, you could get it pretty cheap. And I think we bought that first house for $14,000.
In Kirkland.
No. This was in Minneapolis. I'm still in Minneapolis.
Still, though, can you imagine buying anything for that? Like for $14,000, you can't even get a new car.
I know. I think it was $14,900, and so we spent that. Oh, I don't know how many months it was. And Grandpa Johnson came down. His dad came down, and Helen came down, and we were all working. Of course, I couldn't do much because I couldn't be around the fumes
because you were pregnant.
Because I was pregnant.
That's also probably good, though.
Yeah, and they did all the inside work. So Randy and I took this trip back to Wisconsin, and we went to Minneapolis. We were driving, and I said, I know the address of that house that we built. Let's just go buy it. Yeah. And he said, okay, let's do that. And so that was 2 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah. And so we got out, and the house looked identical. I mean, it had not changed anything. And so he said, now, Mom, let's just sit here. I don't think we should go inside or call or do anything. I opened the door and I ran up to the front door and I knocked on the door.
Quickly, before Randy tackles you. Yeah. No.
And this couple, a cute couple, were standing there, and I said, we built this house and I just love it if you could let us come in. Oh, sure. Come on in. This was the cutest couple.
Oh.
And Randy came in then, and we took all these pictures. The fireplace was exactly like all my pictures. It was the same fireplace.
Yeah.
And they had changed a few things. The same kitchen. Yeah. They had painted the kitchen. The house was basically the same. Yeah. Now, that was years.
Yeah, I mean, 50 years.
50, 60 years.
Yeah. Well, so you and Grandpa Bill lived in this house. Was this the only house you ever lived in together?
No,
Because then you moved to LA,
yeah, we
right? And
lived
then
in,
to
and we lived in a couple houses in LA, and then we moved to Kirkland, in Seattle. So no, we lived in quite a few houses. This was our
hmm
very first house, though,
yeah.
and we were just, we just had a pretty good life because he was working. He put in long hours,
hmm
and I was able to stay home with the kids. And I did do some work at the schools. I became a kind of a substitute for kids that were homesick, and that worked out pretty well for me. But for the most part, I was able to stay home,
Yeah.
and it was not easy for me.
To stay home.
Yeah, I always felt like I wanted to do more. But anyway, I enjoyed staying home, and then we decided
You
to
just said you
move.
didn't enjoy staying home.
Well, I did, but I always liked working.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just like,
I mean, I think I feel the same way. I think there's probably a lot of women who,
yeah,
I mean, some people love staying at home with kids, and that's
yeah,
amazing. And I think there's probably a lot of people who don't need that to be their
yeah,
primary, who
yeah,
want to be out there, who want to be contributing to something else. So,
yeah.
you know,
I think it just was hard. But anyway, we moved then to LA, and we lived in a couple houses there. And then uh, with those companies that Bill was working at, there was a lot of changing. People would buy them out
mhm,
and then bring in their own group.
mhm,
And it was very typical. I think might still be a little bit like that, but there was a lot of changes going through during the 50s and 60s.
mhm.
And so eventually we moved up to Seattle, and we were having some real issues by that time. Bill and I just did not communicate well.
Yeah.
We got married young. I didn't grow up with a father. I I didn't have some of the skills I needed as a partner, and
Yeah.
he didn't either. And we have grown up quite differently, although we were basically. Uh, I think we would have, if we would have been able to talk things through. I think we
Yeah,
would
it
have
would
been
have been.
fine, but
Yeah.
we never did. So
Gosh, the thread of the day is communication and
I
how important it
know,
is and how we're
I
so
know
not equipped. We
to
never
do it.
like talk, even my generation, I think we realize how important communication is, but like in school, I guess you're learning how to do that. But it'd be nice if there was like how to have a difficult conversation. Like
Yeah,
let's talk how to feel your emotions, right?
really, really,
It's so important and
yeah.
yeah.
And I think especially people, the Norwegian, the Swedish,
Mm,
Finnish, Danish people, from what I can understand, they were kind of stoic.
totally.
And they were kind of people that kept things probably to themselves. I mean, I don't think it was all our fault because we didn't have the background to,
Yeah.
we didn't have we weren't equipped with the skills, I
Yeah.
guess. And, but, so then we bought a house and together, in what they call Kingsgate. The kids loved that house
Mhm.
because it was just a brand new area. The house was brand new, and the kids could go out and play. There was all kinds of kids, young families. It was the suburbs,
Yeah.
and so it was a
But
great
that
great
was
place for them to get
yeah.
up. But uh, we eventually, and it was in about 1972, uh, and so we had been there for about 4 or 5 years.
And were
And
you in that time, and then I'm going to ask you the second part of the question.
okay,
But in that time were you always kind of like on the rocks, would you say, for those 4 years?
you know, we just were both busy. I was working full time. He
Mhm.
was working full time. We had 3 kids.
So your relationship was just kind of
It
in the
was,
back seat.
yeah, our relationship was in the back seat for sure. And then finally, and I knew that he had something else going on. So finally, in January of 1972, we decided to go separate ways. So, but we kept pretty much talking to each other.
What do you mean that he had something else going on?
He had a girlfriend from work that he had met, and but if anything else, I was just angry. It wasn't. It was just like, but I went on because I was working and finally, and I had eventually through that year I met Barry, who's my second husband, which was really a mistake. But anyway, then he had gone out with his girlfriend and two other couples in a small boat, and it was like a speedboat.
Yeah, and so this is the second question I was gonna ask, right? Which is, what was the worst day of your life?
Yeah, and that was that day. It was the first part of November. It was cold and windy and probably some rain. And the six of them had gone in the early evening to a football game at the University of Washington in the boat. And then they had, after the, probably late afternoon probably, and then they went into some of the restaurants there that you can take your boat into and have dinner, the six of them. And then they started across, and kind of halfway across, the motor stopped. And it was, they started out about 7:30, and from about 7:30 to about 11:30 at night, all they had was this boat. They didn't have any oars. They had a few life jackets, maybe one, and then seats that were floatable. But other than that, they weren't prepared. They didn't have any of the things you should have if you're in a boat.
Yeah.
I think only one life jacket. So this small boat was pushed up against like the Evergreen Point Bridge. And so through all those hours, they were trying with their feet and with whatever they could to keep the boat from crashing into this bridge and just going, and for hours. And the six of them, finally they started throwing all of their belongings over to there was no way. See, at first they thought they were just able to climb up on the bridge.
Yeah.
There's no way, because there was no way to climb up on the bridge. And the waves were coming way over. It was getting really, really windy. And so they were just getting pushed up against this bridge. And eventually it started falling apart. They had been throwing things up. It was a toll booth there. And people would say to the toll people, something's going on, because I see a purse. Somebody's throwing a purse up on the...
Yeah.
And
so a pedestrian or a person in a car stopped and told the toll booth driver that. Yeah. And then he didn't do anything about it.
They didn't do anything about it. And it was like that. Then it was 11:30, 12 at night.
Yeah.
And so when the boat started, just kind of breaking up, Bob Brody, which was one of the friends of Bill's, said, "I think we have to jump out and get into the water, because otherwise we're going to get really hurt." And as soon as they jumped in the water, he disappeared. And so Bob Brody started swimming, and he swam down to where he could eventually crawl up, because there was a log boom or something, and he was able to crawl up on the log boom and then get up on it. And then this is a wet guy that was standing, trying to get traffic to stop, and nobody would stop. And finally, there was a bridge phone that he called 911. And so eventually, all of a sudden, all the police were there. And two of the policemen actually jumped into the water and they were eventually got everybody up. Now the guy that owned the boat, I think he leased the boat. His wife died because she had hypothermia. She was the
Wow.
only one that actually had the the jacket on. She was a small person, and
So she like was taken out of the water,
she was
and like, but
she died.
died.
She died.
Like
And,
there, do you
yeah.
think, or at the hospital, or
No, I think she died.
there?
Well, she was in the water.
Oh my God.
And so they pulled all these people up, but these people that were helping, I mean, it was just amazing because, you know, at midnight, jumping into this cold water, and it was pretty amazing what they did. Eventually, they were all taken to the hospital.
Yeah.
And then the search went on for Bill's body.
So you said that Bill, like, pretty immediately disappeared
into the water. Yeah, and he was a swimmer. He'd been boating all his years, so I don't know. Actually, he might have just given it up, or he was so tired. Who knows? I don't know what.
Yeah.
The answer.
How old
to that.
is he?
Well, he was 37. We were both 37 at that time. And so I got a call that next morning, and they called and told me. I didn't know any of these people. I had never met them. And so when he called and told me something, we haven't found Bill, I thought that was just weird. So I called my friend George Fisher. George and Carol had been our best friends, and we had done a lot of camping with them. And George went down to where he kept his boat. Now his boat was there. He had a big, huge boat, but they didn't take that boat. They decided to take this other boat, which was probably horrible. But anyway,
and George Fisher was on the boat with Bill that night?
No. He just went to check, and Bill wasn't there. And yeah, he said, yeah, he's gone. So we had to call his mother and father. Well,
did you do that? Did you call and tell them?
Somebody told me when I just said, I don't know how I can do this. I don't know how I could call them because they were in. I think they lived in North Dakota at that time. I think they were in Fargo, and it was the worst. It was the worst time.
Yeah.
So anyway, somebody told me call the church.
Oh, right.
Their church.
Yeah.
And see if the pastor would go over and talk to them. And that's what I did, which was great because
smart.
she ended up in the hospital. She kind of had a heart attack or something.
Well, her star child.
I know. I mean,
and it's an incredible tragedy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And what ensued after was also just.
Oh, yeah. Like from then on, it was just like everything was a disaster. It's really changed our life, all the kids and the parents in my life forever. I mean, we've never really gotten over it. I don't think anybody's ever gotten over that type of thing.
Yeah.
Such a tragedy. One day you've got a father, the next day you don't. I mean, who can deal with that as young kids? And they were like 9, 11, 12 years old. So, anyway, but we got through all that. And
I know there was not that we have to go into it too much, but so much kind of drama with getting any type of compensation. I mean, the person the father of these 3 children now is gone, and for a really wrongful death, in my opinion, one that could have absolutely been prevented.
There was a wrongful death suit.
Yeah.
The problem with what happened though is because I had been out of the picture for so long.
Yeah.
I wasn't included in any of it.
Well, but you still were technically married. right?
We were married,
Like,
but
by law.
but they didn't consider me as part of anything. Kind of, Grandpa and Grandma were the main people of the state, and then George was the executor. And so, because they didn't live in Seattle, George kind of took, and he was great. I mean, I don't know what we would have done without George, because he was really one of these. He worked with Bill. He was one of these kind of engineering guys that everything was just right. So anyway, but it all worked out, and then that's why we moved to Whidbey Island. I had to get out of there.
Yeah.
It was in the newspapers, it was on TV, there was pictures. You know, it was such a tragedy. And but
and you'd say like getting that call was like that was the worst day of your life.
That was the worst day of my life. Yeah. I mean, and you know, with everything, anytime people die in accidents or you know, terrible things happen in your life, you always somehow feel guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always that part.
Yeah.
What could have I done differently?
Yeah.
Who, you know, so all of that kind of is part of your rest of your life. How can I? What was it that you know
that you could have done? Even though the answer to that is probably most of the time nothing, right? Like
yeah. It was different circumstances.
Well,
so,
here I have one last question before we.
Oh, by the way, that those came from Annie.
Yeah.
Okay.
What if there's like one thing that you would want your kids to know about Bill? What would it be? Maybe that's
he was really fun.
Yeah.
He had a great sense of humor. He told jokes. He liked to party. He always had a lot of boyfriends from high school, and he kept track of them forever. I mean, these guys were really close, and they were all part of the football team or the basketball team. He was that guy that was always part of that group.
Yeah,
kind of popular.
Yeah,
people, and
sounds
I
like
think people really looked up to him in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
as being pretty special. But
just because it sounds like he was a connector. If he was part of these groups and wanting to keep track of people, like a good friend, and like someone
really good friend
you wanted in your life, and because he brought fun and joy and play.
And you know, our family was all about fun. I mean, we always had so much fun, and he was one of those people that could do that too with us. So my mom loved him. I mean, everybody liked Bill a lot. I mean, he didn't have any enemies at all. Yeah. But anyway, that was the worst day of my life.
They say so casually. Yeah. Well, I even as his granddaughter, I always have wondered what he was like, and how like our lives could have been different if if he would have been there. And
he was really good looking.
Really?
Yeah, he's really cute.
Probably cuter than my dad.
Yeah. He looks a lot like him.
Oh, a lot like my dad. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. He had that Johnson, is more of a Johnson.
Yeah, look.
Yeah. Than a Hallberg or my mom's side of the family.
Well, he definitely lives on in the namesake of all of his great-grandsons, right? We have two Williams, and we have Keegan Clifford, and so obviously his memory still lives on, and I think I can
and the other thing is in Randy's kids, he's got a William too.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say there's two Williams. Yeah.
He's definitely
Tor.
And Tor what?
And there's a grandson Tor.
Well, but
yeah.
he's not. Okay, we have the peanut gallery has something to say. Aunt Niche, she's gonna hide back there. But is Tor's namesake for William?
No.
That's what we were saying.
Oh, okay.
We were saying that Grandpa Bill lives on through many people and through many energies, but also through the namesake of 2 Williams
You're right.
and a Clifford
Right.
and a Tor. And don't worry, Sven Yamaha.
Yeah.
We got you too.
We got you too.
And I think more importantly namesakes are an important thing, but I think that from what you just said, he lives on through kind of all of our passion for joy, right?
Yeah.
And for fun and for play.
Practical jokes.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what George Fisher was saying? How they used to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He and George at work had this thing. That was so funny. George would call me, Dana, where's the pie plate? I'd say, I don't know where the pie plate is. He never tells me. So they had this pie plate that was dirty. And so they kept hiding it in each other's office.
Oh.
And so the thing is, they would come in the morning and try and find the dirty pie plate.
Oh my
And
God.
that went back on. I mean, they would glue down somebody's chair. So one of the roller chairs, they would glue their chairs down. Oh my gosh.
Well,
They did.
it sounds like we all need to step up our practical joke game, so that we can keep that moving on, because it is so important to find silliness and lightness, and that's definitely sounds like something that
it is part of our
Bill
family,
had.
right?
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps that up.
Yep.
Well, in memory of, what was his full name?
Bill.
William
Clifford
Clifford Johnson.
Yep.